to make it today or to our in-person session in this afternoon. So welcome. It's really nice to see so many of you. I saw your names all popping up, lots of familiar names and some new parents as well, which is really nice. So we are coming to the end of our first assessment and reporting cycle here at our early years in our primary school here at BIS Houston. And we have made a few changes to the reporting process that were based on feedback from parents last year. And in particular, I don't know if there's anybody here from my parent advisory group, but I got some really constructive and good honest feedback from some parents on our report itself actually last year, and that's really helped us drive some of the changes that we've made so that hopefully we can provide you with some really clear information as to how your child is progressing, what their next steps are, and kind of what those expectations are for them. So I hope that you do find this helpful this morning. At the end, we will certainly answer any questions that you have, but if you do want to talk any further in detail, then please, do reach out to myself or Miss Kernan, and we'll be very happy to chat through things with you. So let's get started. There we are. So the goals for this morning are, firstly, we're going to share information with you regarding some of the assessment practices in early years and primary school. So you do get that report at the end of this assessment cycle, but I think it's really important for us to share with you how we actually get to those judgments that we provide on your child with you. So the second thing is we're going to demonstrate some of these practices, and they look different as children get older and move the way through the school, and there's different assessment processes that we use. So we're going to explain a little bit about those and what they look like. We're going to share with you the format for the reports. Ms. Kennan's going to go through the early years report, and I'll go through the report with you for years 1 to 6. And also we're going to talk a little bit about what you can expect from the parent-teacher-student conference, which will take place after you've had the report. You should have had an email about that today, but we're going to chat more about that at the end of our session. One thing that I wanted to say that I'm not going to talk about is our curriculum coverage and the learning units or the expectations at each age group, because we could be here all day talking about what's expected at every year group. And that's really a conversation for you to have with your child's teacher. But also I wanted to signpost you again to our Atlas Rubicon platform. This presentation is going to be sent out, and there are lots of hyperlinks in it for you. And Atlas is our curriculum planning tool that we use in school, and it is visible to you as parents. So when you go onto Atlas, you can have a little look. Here you go, the password is academics. You can have a look and you can browse all of the units of learning. You can have a look at year 7, the IB year groups, whatever you want to do, but it will show you the objectives that are being covered in each unit of learning. And I've just screenshotted an example there from year 4, one of their English units. It will show you the calendar, the units that the children will be doing throughout the year. And then you can dive deeper into that and really see what are the essential questions and the key concepts that the children will be learning during that unit of learning. And those are the ones that the children will be assessed against. And those are the ones that we're looking for them to make progress within in each section. It also has an assessment section on the right, which shows you the types of assessments that the teachers will be administering during that unit of learning. So hopefully that can really give you specific information about your child's year group and what they're studying and how they're going to be assessed. So this is more a general presentation about assessment practices and the reporting process across our primary and early years school. So the report that you receive as a parent is one of the products of a cycle that is continuous throughout our school year. This is our assessment, our reporting, and our reflection cycle. And it begins with the planned curriculum, which you can see on Atlas, and carefully designed lessons that take place and learning opportunities in our classrooms every day. And during the teaching and learning element of our curriculum, there are 2 types of assessment really that are taking place. Those are formative and summative assessments. And I'm going to talk in a moment specifically about what they may look like in the classroom. And through our assessments, the teachers will come to level judgments in each reporting cycle on your child across several subjects, and within subjects, different areas. So maths is broken down into subsections, also for English as well. Then you will receive a formal report, which you're about to receive next Thursday, I think. And part of the reporting process also involves reflection. So we look at student reflections on their learning from that 12-week cycle. They'll reflect on their progress. They'll reflect on the process. They'll also reflect on what they might like to try harder at or become more proficient at, and they'll set themselves goals. So I can show you at the end of the presentation some of the elements of that reflection process. And then to kind of finish that cycle, we have the parent teacher student conference. And that's the opportunity to discuss the judgments, the report, your child's reflections, and help them set goals, for their progress for the next reporting cycle. So we have 3 cycles of assessment and reporting throughout the school year, and they're approximately 12 weeks long, not all exactly 12 weeks long, but they are, sorry, I'm just, people are coming in. They're 12 weeks long. So we have 3 throughout the school year. So I mentioned formative and summative assessments, and these are the 2 main types of assessment that take place in school. Formative assessment, which is the most impactful type of assessment. Here are just some examples of what it might look like. It may look like mini quizzes with children. For some subjects, we do something called tick it in, tick it out. So tick it in may be just a small assessment where the teacher is looking at the baseline to say, okay, we're going to be teaching this unit. What do the children already know? What are some gaps I may need to plug with them just to see where they are? They may then do a little tick it out on some of those areas to see, okay, has the child made progress? I put something in place with my class. Where are they now? Also through classwork. So formative assessment is going on every single day. The teachers are assessing your children's classwork against the lesson objectives and the goals for the lesson. They're providing marking and feedback. And feedback is really a key element of formative assessment because it allows us to give children real-time feedback in order for them to help drive their learning even further. It's through questioning and observation. So we may observe groups, and Rosemary can talk specifically about what that looks like in early years as well. And we're observing learning behaviors, and we're asking children questions that help draw out information or knowledge or their understanding of various concepts. And these are behaviors that are taking place in the classroom all of the time. In lessons, teachers may want some immediate feedback from their class, and they may use tools like Show Me. So we have, our whiteboards in class. So we may ask the children, everybody a question, and we may ask them to show us their answer. We have various, tools and apps that the children use then to submit answers for Show Me questions. And also we may have small groups that we pull out and say, okay, show me how you did this, talk me through this. And it really just lets us unpick a little bit more about how children are learning, what are they understanding. So we're tracking their learning and we're assessing it in real time. So formative assessment is really a continuous process and is shown to be one of the most effective ways to help drive improvements in learning. Rosemary, is there anything else that you wanted to add about formative assessment?
I think you've covered it very well there. The main purpose of it is to inform your kind of teaching and your practices, as you said, to just keep moving learning forward.
Thanks. And then summative assessment. And summative assessment is often the type of assessment, and certainly from my own experience, but I don't know if any parents are as old as I am, but certainly summative assessment is what we would say is a traditional view of assessment. It's end of unit testing. Map testing is a summative assessment. They are snapshots of achievement or attainment in that moment in time. Certainly something that we've experienced, perhaps, examinations, standardized testing. So that is summative. It may be a final product or a test that you give the children, or a reading assessment that you give them, and you'll do that periodically. Whereas with formative assessment, it's a continuous process. As children get older, more summative assessment is kind of added into the assessment portfolio. So in early years, and certainly when children are in, years 1 and through 2, and year 3, there's a bigger focus on formative assessment. When our children get a little bit older, so in year 4, that's when they begin map testing and things like that. And then obviously as they get older, they'll do external examinations, their GCSEs or the International Baccalaureate, ACTs, SATs, those type of assessments are summative. So it's kind of, they are added into the mix as children get older. So in short, really, some formative assessment takes place whilst the learning is happening and allows us real-time feedback on how a child is learning and progressing, and lets us adjust our teaching and learning intentions to help improve and drive learning. And then summative assessment ordinarily takes place after the learning has happened. So we use a combination of formative and summative assessments in our assessment practices and our processes. So Rosemary, who is the true expert on early years, is going to talk to you about the early years assessment process.
Good morning, everyone. So as Gemma was saying, early years is primarily employing a formative approach towards assessment. We're really working with the children and using those observational skills to assess children's learning. I don't think I can move the presentation on, Mrs. Overett. Could you do that for me? Thank you. So in the early years, we use the Early Years Foundation Stage Framework as our primary curriculum. That's where we take our learning goals from and our assessment tools from. Development Matters is one of the tools that teachers use to help them unpick the learning. It breaks the Early Years Foundation stage down into progressive developmental month bandings. So it starts at birth and it goes through to 60 months. And then that feeds into the early learning goals. So that tool really helps teachers to unpick exactly what it is that they are wanting to see from children, what they need to be looking out for. The main way they're assessing against that is using observation. So they have planned time during the day in their curriculum where they take a step back from leading the learning and they watch children apply their learning. So teachers would be assessing children in some small group focus tasks where they're working with the children, but they would also be looking at children applying that learning in their play as well. So of course, that doesn't always just happen necessarily naturally. If teachers are assessing how children are maybe able to write their numerals, children might not naturally just go and be writing them while they're doing some building. So teachers might add some stimulus in there, for example, putting writing tools in there or giving children a verbal challenge to try and write something down. I saw one of the teachers yesterday in the home corner with children, playing with them, and they were working on a shopping list to go to the shop. So she suggested, could they write down their shopping list? So applying their phonics skills, their writing skills independently. And could they note down how many of each thing they were buying at the shops as well? So getting them to practice writing their numbers too. Can we move on, Mrs. Overett? So within the Early Years Foundation Stage Framework, there are these different 7 areas of learning. So these are similar to the subjects that you would study from year 1 to year 6 in school. So communication and language, teachers are assessing how children are communicating with each other, with their peers, and with teachers. It also brings in some listening skills as well. So it's not just our children able to talk well to other people, can they listen and respond appropriately to others? Physical development, we often compare to PE in the primary school, those bigger movements, but it does also include fine motor skills. So things like early mark making, writing, painting, all of those things that need a little bit more finesse. Personal, social and emotional development is focused on things like hygiene skills, which would be a personal skill, social, the way they work with other people and build friendships, and their emotional resilience, the way they're able to respond to challenging situations or positive situations. In literacy, we're really talking about reading and writing. So we have a progressive phonics program that starts in EY1 and goes all the way through to year 2. And then some students will still access it from year 3 if they need a little bit of support with that as well. All of the teachers in this area use the same assessment program that links with phonics. So that same assessment program starts in EY1 and goes through to year 2. So we really have a great deal of alignment on that, and children are able to build on their learning each year they move through the school. In maths, children are assessed in the areas of number and shape, space and measure. There's a lot of focus on use of language early on, so it's really providing that foundation for applying math skills as they move through into year 1. In understanding the world, that would most closely align to our IPC curriculum. So you're looking at subjects like geography, history, children understanding their place in the world and the people around them. So a lot of that is observed and assessed through discussion. We try and provide some stimuli to make it the learning in context for them. So for example, we've had some really great Diwali celebrations happening, and thank you to all the parents who've been able to come in and support us with that. That helps children really understand deeply what we are trying to put across about different cultures and people celebrating things in different ways. And then finally, expressive arts and design is linked most closely to art, but we also bring in our music and our performing arts through that element as well. So those are all of the different areas that you'll see graded in your child's report. So the teachers have this matrix that they use to help them unpick and kind of graduate their grading for children. So we have EY1 here on this page, and it's broken down to each of our 3 reporting cycles. As Gemma said, those roughly 12-week cycles that we work on. And you'll see along the top bar, we have our 4-point grading system, which I'll talk a little bit more about when we look at the report front cover. And underneath, we've broken the development matters progression down across the year for EY1 and then across the year for EY2. So if your child were to stay at, for example, the achieving grade, it doesn't mean that they haven't made any progress each term, because it becomes progressively more challenging to stay at that grade each time. The expectation shifts and increases for each reporting cycle. If we have a look at the EY2 example on the next page, you can see here, there we go. So if you see here, to start off as achieving for the first reporting cycle in EY2, we just are expecting the children to really be beginning at that 40 to 60 month banding. By the second reporting cycle, we're wanting children to really be working well within that banding. So you can see how the expectation has increased there. And then by the final reporting cycle, we're wanting children to be really achieving those ELGs. They've worked all through the 40 to 60 months. They've had all of that support and preparation ready to achieve the early learning goals. And there are 17 of those that we work with the children with, and they span each of those 7 areas of learning. So we have a look at what the report template actually looks like. So this is the front page that you'll see. So again, we have those 7 areas of learning at the top, and we've just broken down with a really short statement for each of those, just to really exemplify them and help you understand what it is that we are talking about when we're reporting on those later in the report. And then on the bottom bar, we have our 4-point grading system. So when we start with emerging, and this goes through the whole primary school, it starts in early years and goes all the way through to year 6. So emerging is really where the child is just starting to work on this area of learning, starting to work on this subject or this particular area of learning. If they're approaching, they are working towards the age-related expectations. They're nearly there, but they've still got some next steps to really get to that level. If they're achieving, they're working at age-related expectations, and that's for this point in the year. So we're not looking at age-related expectations for the end of year, we're looking at where they should be at this point in the reporting cycle. And then finally, we have our exceeding grade, which is where the children are working above age-related expectations. So this first page of the report is really just a cheat sheet for you to help you unpick the information that comes later. On the second page, you'll see we start with the class teacher comment, and that's a real qualitative comment where the teachers, for me, is the most enjoyable part to write of the report, because it's where you really think about the child as a whole and all the great things that you know about them, all the great successes they've had this half term. So on this part, you'll kind of see what the teacher has to say as a general overview of your child. And then there's the student voice section where children get their chance to share their own view on their learning. And that starts right down in EY1. They've talked about some things that they really enjoyed about school, some things that they've enjoyed learning, some things that they've done really well with. It's really great to hear actually how insightful even the youngest of our children are about their learning and the things that they've done over the last 12 weeks. Then on the final page of our report, you will see those 7 areas of learning. You can see there's the 3 columns, so that will break down the grading for each term or each reporting cycle. And then finally, there's space for the teachers to leave you a comment. So they'll talk about some progress that your child has made in each of these areas, and then also suggest some next steps and things to keep working on to aid your child's development. But we do say the reports are really just a snapshot. We really do encourage you to come to the parent teacher student conferences to book an appointment for that and take some time to speak with your child's class teacher, where they can really go into this in a lot more detail and help unpick it all for you and give you even more kind of examples for each of the things that they've shared.
Oh, thank you, Rosie. Sorry about that. I was trying to keep up and answer some of the questions in the chat that some of our parents had, but I will answer them. I do see them and I will, but I'm clicking buttons all at the same time, which I'm sure is very annoying. Okay. What our assessment looks like in years 1 to 6, and then also, like Rosie did, talk about the report format and kind of what the changes are, and explain a little bit about that to you. So the areas of learning that we report on in the academic report are English, maths, the international primary curriculum, science, performing arts and music, world languages, and physical education. So you will receive a level descriptor for each of those, and differing comments for each subject, which I'll go through at the end of the report session. So for English, like I said, the subject is reported on, but it is broken down into the different skills and the areas that we assess in English. So we teach English through the national curriculum objectives, and those are by milepost or by year group, and your child's teacher will be able to share information with you. And I think as well, we've put links in here to the national curriculum. They are then broken down into 3 sections that we're looking at. It's spoken language, reading, and writing. So those are the 3 areas that we'll report on. So when we're looking at writing, there's several, there's a lot of different areas that come into writing. So I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of an idea about some of the things that we're looking at when we're assessing writing generally. So we're looking at transcription and SPAG. And SPAG is spelling, punctuation, and grammar. So these are really, along with handwriting and writing fluency, the technical elements of the writing process. We're then also looking at composition. So can children, this is a lovely quote here, we're looking that they can write clearly, accurately, and coherently, and that they can adapt their language for different purposes. So they're taking into account who the audience is, what the purpose for their writing is, and they are adapting it accordingly. So there's different elements to the writing process that we're looking at with children. Some of the areas and some of the evidence bases. So when we come to arrive at a judgment, and when we say, okay, at this time, at this moment in time, your child is achieving, so they are at the expected level in writing. How do we come to that level? Well, we use, like I said before, assessment processes where we're drawing from formative assessment and also summative assessment. But here are some of the specific ways that we assess writing and arrive at a judgment. So teachers will use, a range of sources. It's not just relying on one thing. We use something called the Oxford Writing Criterion. And when we send out this presentation, that's a link to the criterion. And basically, this really looks at the technical elements of writing, spelling and grammar. So it's a kind of a list really of the things that children should be working their way through in each year group. So it's a tick list really, but that's not the only source of assessment that we use. For children in years 4 and above, they also do map testing. Now, one of the elements of the map test is language usage. This doesn't test writing. In a sense, it's very hard for a computerized assessment to test writing. But what it does do is it gives us an idea about how well children understand how language is used. So you can draw from that if you have a really good understanding of that, that should help you then apply that in your own writing. We use different performance the children's performance in summative assessments. So if you have a look on the Atlas unit, where there's a summative writing assessment, so a piece of writing that the children are working up towards at the end of a unit of learning, it will kind of give you some details about what that written piece will look like or what will be expected from the children in that. As I said, we track the national curriculum. Those are the objectives that we use. And teachers are, through their formative assessments, are checking, okay, we've taught this objective, children have had opportunity to use it, how secure are they in their understanding of this area of writing or in applying this skill independently. It may be that they've done lots of practice in different sentence types. Are the children now applying that in an independent piece of writing? And another really important area is that writing does not take place only in an English lesson or in a writing lesson. So we are looking at children using these skills across their subjects. And we're looking for evidence of that, because really that shows us that they've taken these skills, they're using that, and they can apply it to write creatively or for information across a range of subjects and for a range of purposes. So that's really, truly where you do see that a child has mastered something, is when you see them doing it out of that particular lesson and context. So we're talking about writing as well. When they do writing in their IPC, they may write for science. So we're bringing all of those elements into that. So these are the sources of evidence that teachers will use and draw from when coming to the judgment on writing. So for reading, again, it's a range of sources that we use. You may have heard of Book Club, and I'm sure if you were in virtual learning, you heard your child was using Book Club a lot. So Book Club is a leveled reading program that the children have on their iPads, and it gives some formative feedback during children's independent reading, and it also has comprehension assessments. So Book Club can help us assess children's reading comprehension. So that will give us a little bit of an idea about where they are and what level they're at there. For children in years 4 to 6, MAP also gives us reading levels. So we can then compare, okay, what are we seeing in the classroom when we're doing our formative assessment? What does MAP tell us when we do a summative assessment? So we can triangulate and compare that data and ask, any good questions that we may have about that. For some of our younger learners, we would use phonics and high frequency word assessments. So the children are, they're having their daily phonics lessons, they're doing their high frequency words, and periodically we'll check, okay, right, can they apply this? Have the children retained this? Is this knowledge secure? And the teachers will, keep a record and track that. So performance in summative assessments, so we may give children reading assessments. Certainly older children, we may use a more summative assessment, where with younger children, it's a very formative approach where we're tracking their reading behaviours. We're tracking them against the objectives for their year group, and we're listening to them read, and we'll keep doing an analysis. We'll keep a live reading record when a child does. We may do that periodically, so to inform, okay, are they ready to move on to the next level of reading book? Are we able to give them a Book Club comprehension test? Because I feel as though I can hear them reading fluently. I feel as though, they're understanding the story, but I want to do a comprehension check just to make sure. So there's a whole source of evidence bases that they can draw from in reading. So when we're looking at reading, we're breaking reading down into the 3 skills. So we're looking at decoding, we're looking at fluency, and we're looking at comprehension. So decoding in its most simple sense is, can they read the words, and are they able to decode an unfamiliar word? What we're looking for is for children to use their phonics and their understanding of high frequency words to be able to not have to decode words, right? So we're giving them those skills so that they can break down words that they don't know, but hopefully then they're putting those words then into their long-term memory so they can recall them and they can read them by sight. Where then, once children can decode accurately, can they then read fluently? So are they reading and paying attention to punctuation? Do they know what is speech? Do they know when to pause? Can they then read with expression and make their reading come to life? And fluency is really important in helping children to develop deeper comprehension, because they then understand the intention of the author and what the text is trying to portray. And then obviously comprehension is our ultimate goal, to understand what you're reading while you're reading it. So when we're assessing reading and we're looking at it, we're looking at those 3 skills. And as children get older, less of the decoding really needs to happen because they become more fluent readers. So we use Bug Club, we use the national curriculum objectives for each age phase to help children and for us to track their reading progress. So here are some book band levels. You don't need to memorize this. I promise I'm going to send it all out to you. And these are kind of our guides for what children are aiming for at the end of each year to be on track or to be achieving. So you'll see they're bands. So children will work their way through these bands at different levels. And particularly with younger children, they'll move through those bands perhaps a little more quickly. And then, it slows down as they get older because the books are more complex. And what's needed to move on to the next level is more sophisticated comprehension skills. So we're looking at moving from children who are learning to read, probably from around EY, I would say, up to, about year 3. And then in year 3, those skills move towards more about being able to read to learn. So what's expected of them is quite different. And then we're also going to send this out, which could be broken down by each year group and with each term. So it would show you, okay, in year 3, in the first term, if your child is around a brown B, that's where we would be achieving. Brown A would be approaching, which means there are a few more things that they need to do in order to get to that next level for reading. And these are really great conversations for you to have with your child's teacher at PTSEs about, okay, what do we need to help get them to the next level? What is it? Is it the fluency? Are we still working on decoding? Or is it that your child reads beautifully and it sounds great, but they're unable to answer those comprehension questions? So those are really good conversations to have about reading with your child's class teacher. We've also got for term 2 and for term 3. So these are guides. So it's not hard and fast, okay, my child is on a white reading book, therefore they are this. As I said before, we're drawing from a range of sources. So reading doesn't just take place in the English lesson or in the guided reading session. We're looking at how they read across they're accessing written material all of the time throughout the school day. Spoken language. Okay, so the final element to the English levels that we provide is spoken language. And we're looking at not only how children can express themselves using spoken language, but also how do they communicate? How are their listening skills? And there's, just several areas here that we would look at. We would observe children's behavior in discussions. So when children are sent off to talk about things in small groups, the teachers are rotating around those groups. They're asking questions, they're listening, they're observing the conversations that children are having. There are lots of opportunities for children to give presentations, so to present and to share and articulate their learning across all subjects. So this again is not just taking place in an English lesson. We're looking for this across subjects, and we're helping children and coaching them and helping them to explain their ideas and their thoughts. We use drama and role play, and that's a key part of the English curriculum, the CLP curriculum that we use, and that goes all the way through. So we're asking children to not only in free play, to when they choose to engage in role play, but also we're adding drama into our English lessons, sometimes IPC. It's possible across all areas of the curriculum. Debating and pitching, that then comes into the English curriculum. That's in the objectives as well, is to give for children to debate specific questions. I know in IPC and in also, our Jigsaw PSHE curriculum, children will engage in structured debates about various topics. And then for pitches, a lot of the IPC units as well have opportunities for children to pitch their ideas, to pitch a product, to pitch a restaurant, you know, year 4 make their own restaurants and things like that. So these are opportunities for children to develop their spoken language and their communication skills across the curriculum. Rosemary, do you have anything to say about spoken language?
No, I think exactly as you said, the emphasis is really on the application of this across everywhere, all of the subjects in the curriculum. And it's really seen as spoken language underpinning the reading and the writing as well. So we really look at how we can develop children's spoken language as a first step to help intervene in their reading and their writing acquisition too.
Thank you. Okay, maths. So when we are reporting on assessment, reporting on maths, we will report on number, measurement, geometry, and statistics. Now, in each reporting and assessment cycle, your child won't study every single one of these units. They will probably study number in most reporting cycles, because number is the area of the curriculum that we focus on the most. Measurement, geometry, and statistics will come in at various points, and obviously statistics comes in a little bit later for different year groups. When we are teaching maths, so those are the areas of the curriculum that we'll report on. And when we are teaching maths, we're also then looking at, okay, the children have skills and they have knowledge and understanding in these areas. Can they apply them? So it's not just about being able to complete addition or complete subtraction or know your times tables. We're then looking at children being able to problem solve and use this information in various scenarios. And that's really a key component of the Maths Mastery program and the Maths Mastery approach that we use and follow. So the elements to that are fluency, reasoning, and problem solving. And I'm just going to give a very quick example of what that might look like in a maths lesson. But we're also going to do some more curriculum focused parent sessions throughout the school year where we can really dive into it. But I just wanted to kind of give you a little idea about what that might look like. So this is a year 4 lesson. So fluency, being able to understand number and solve, you know, fairly basic calculations with that. So these are some of the questions that we would ask children to have a look at as a whole class. This is part of a teacher input where the teacher would say, my turn, your turn, okay? I've done it, now you do it. And they would give them different sets of numbers, it would look different. And we would ask the children to solve a couple of questions, to have a look and just make sure that you can use their knowledge of number to solve these fluency questions. The next section that we would move on to with children would be reasoning. So can they take this knowledge of number, can they apply it in situations where there are unknown amounts or unknown operations? And can they then reason about it? So we might give them a number sentence, some of the parts might be missing. We would be expecting the children to use their knowledge of number to then kind of solve that. But the next step is to either, you know, prove or disprove a theory about that calculation or that problem and explain why. So it's a huge part of the mastery approach is children explaining their thinking and their reasoning about number. And that's at all levels, even with young children, okay? So we're doing that through question. Okay, tell me why. Why do you think that? What knowledge are you drawing on to come to that conclusion? And then problem solving. And there are opportunities for this in all of our maths lessons. So we're then asking children to take their knowledge of number, whether it be complex, you know, bigger numbers, smaller numbers. We're asking them to reason about it, and we're asking them to solve a problem themselves using all of that knowledge and reasoning skills and apply it to a problem solving situation. One key element about the problem solving as well is that we're asking children to find different ways of doing things, and then ultimately then they create their own problems as well and design their own mathematical problems. So I just wanted to give you a very, very quick taste of what, you know, fluency, reasoning and problem solving might look like in a daily lesson. Teachers then are tracking the children against the national curriculum standards for that year group. So there's, observing and using formative assessment to see how the children are progressing against the standards or the objectives that we've taught in those lessons. They are looking at children's fluency. So they're looking at how they can calculate what their understanding of number is, can they fluently carry out operations? Can they, as they get older, do that without manipulatives? Can they do that in mental math, mental arithmetic? How do they then apply it in problem solving situations? And then finally, that reasoning element as well. The reasoning element, okay, can they justify their answers? Can they explain their answers? Are they, able to journal their answers and, talk me through it when we get through a problem? So teachers will use all of those sources and we provide them with this rubric. This is a generic rubric which can be applied to different year groups. So obviously the age-related expectations are different in each different year group. So the teachers are coming to an evidence-based judgment about where that child is in this reporting cycle, in this assessment cycle in mathematics. Rosie, do you have anything to add on maths?
Just to say that a child doesn't have to do each one of those statements 100% completely perfectly to actually achieve it. Teachers are looking at a best fit and using their judgment that, of course, there are still going to be some gaps in some part, but have they achieved most of that? What next step do I need to put in place to help them to get there for the rest of it? So not saying they have to do all of these things completely perfectly to achieve or to exceed or to approach.
Yeah, that's really important. Thanks, Rosie. Yeah, we're looking for a solid enough grasp of the key elements, not 100% accuracy all of the time with those things. Yeah, thanks, Rosie. Okay, Rosemary's going to talk to you about science.
So for science, we used the national curriculum for England FAT. That gives us our unit topics and the things that children learn about. Would you flick to the next slide, please? So that will give us the individual topics that children work on, and then staff will look at children's scientific knowledge. They'll develop conceptual understanding. So the way children do that is through linking different parts of the knowledge they gain through different units together, and that helps them develop their understanding of those bigger concepts in science. And the skills part of this curriculum is really all about working scientifically. So that's about students being able to apply their skills to carry out investigations, what I think when I was at school we would have called experiments, are now the investigations to test their theories about different things in science. So you can see some of the scientific skills there that we developed. Yesterday in year one, we were doing a science lesson where we were developing our skills of observation, and we were going into our grounds and observing different plants and seeing what we could notice about them. So there are lots of different skills that we can practice within that. To help teachers with their judgment in this area, we have two different sets of rubrics that teachers can use. So this is a more general rubric. If we're looking at this achieving box, we can see there what teachers are really looking for is for students to be using their scientific vocabulary. Can they make links and comparisons, things they've learned previously? Again, that's developing that conceptual understanding. Can they apply their knowledge and skills when they are carrying out investigations and doing some scientific inquiry? Are they able to make predictions? And when we talk about predictions, I always tell the children we're not talking about those wild guesses, we're talking about an educated guess where we're using that scientific knowledge and understanding that we've gained throughout our units to really try and make sure that our predictions are something that we think could happen. And of course we always bring that back to the reflecting as well, so that ability to really draw conclusions. So this is more of a general kind of overview rubric that would help with the national curriculum. If teachers want to unpick some of the investigative skills in a little bit more detail, they have a rubric that they can use from the IPC. So science learning, we do link to IPC wherever is meaningful and relevant. We really believe in that thematic learning and given children learning in context. So teachers can use some of the rubrics from the IPC to help unpick some of those investigative skills as well. So this is an example from milepost 1. So for year 1, year 2, you can see we've aligned it to the 4-point grading system that we use as well. And then something I really like about the IPC units and rubrics, and I know that teachers like as well, is that they offer learning advice. So these are some clear next steps that children can take, teachers can deliver with children to help them move between those different grade boundaries. So that's really great formative assessment tool. So then coming on to the IPC, so this is the International Primary Curriculum. In a very basic term, we can think of it as all of the subjects that aren't English, maths, and then to some extent science. So we have several different subjects that we cover within this. We'll go to the next slide. So here we can see these will look a little bit different to if you were in our school last year. The IPC has updated their curriculum this year, so we've done the same as well. So some of the subject names have changed slightly and the content has changed slightly. So the subjects covered within the IPC are art, design, technology and innovation, geography, history, international, and ICT and computing. And then for each of these different subjects, there are knowledge, skills, and understanding learning goals that go with them. And for the skills goals, because they're something that take a little bit longer to achieve and they're slightly harder to unpick, there are actually rubrics that go with each of those. So the way the learning goals are split up is by milepost. So year 1 and year 2 would be a milepost 1. Milepost 2 is made up of year 3 and year 4. And milepost 3 is year 5 and year 6. So those learning goals are broader and slightly bigger than some of the national curriculum goals. So they will take place over 2 years and take around 2 years to achieve. So that's the way we split them, the reason we split them up like that. When you get sent this document, the pictures there are all links for you to click on, so you can actually look at the rubrics if you would like to and see how the children are assessed against each of the subjects in each of those different mileposts. And just to say, as a change from last year as well, if you were in our school last year, IPC was reporting on using beginning, developing and mastering. This year, it's aligned with the rest of our reporting process. So it's using the 4-point grading system, emerging, approaching, achieving and exceeding.
Thanks, Rosie. So just onto the primary report format, the new format for our reports. And I'm just going to explain just kind of a little bit about some of the differences there. So what you'll see is instead of the 1 to 7, we no longer use the 1 to 7 grading system in the primary school. And this was, this was trialed in order to try and get some consistency with the secondary school. And we used it with our teachers, and our teachers did their best to create the frameworks to fit with 1 to 7. The truth is really that it doesn't fit with the way that primary subjects are taught and the way that primary subjects are assessed, especially the ones that are in line with the national curriculum. So it was, from a range of sources, from parents who said, some of the reporting is a little bit confusing because we were using 1 to 7 for some subjects, we were using different descriptors for the IPC, and it just became confusing. And I don't want to confuse parents. We want you to feel like you have the right information, that it is concise, and then it gives you a really good idea about where your child is in their learning. So you will receive the report, and for each area of the curriculum that is being assessed, your child will be given a leveled judgment, and the leveled judgments work from emerging. So that's where the child really is still beginning at this level to access and to master some of the objectives that they're being taught. Approaching, which means they really are, they're starting to work on those. They're not quite where they need to be, but they're making good progress towards it. So if your child is approaching an area, it means there are just a few gaps there that they need to have a look at. And that's a really great conversation to have with the teacher in terms of, okay, so they're approaching in writing. What are the elements, that they're missing from being at where we need them to be or where we'd like them to be? So during the conversation, the teacher may show you some of the assessed pieces of writing, and you can then help reinforce some of the areas that may be just not secure enough for us to give them the achieving judgment. Achieving means, and achieving is a broad range, and most children will probably fall within that range of achieving, is, they're mastering most of those age-related expectations at this time of the school year, which is really important for us to point out, is that it doesn't mean they've achieved all of the national curriculum objectives for year 2 or for year 3. It means that at this time of the year, for the objectives that have been planned and taught, your child has mastered most of them and is secure in their knowledge. Exceeding will mean that your child is working and is accessing above their age-related expectations. So these will be whatever area that it may be in, it means that your child will be requiring additional challenge in some of those areas, and that they're working above their, their age. So you will receive a report that looks a little bit like this. So in maths, as I said, these are the areas of maths: number, measurement, statistics, and geometry. The areas that have been taught, you'll receive expected, achieving, approaching in the box here. If it hasn't been taught, the box will be grayed out. So if you see a gray box, it just means that the children haven't covered sufficient of those objectives in this assessment cycle for us to then, it wasn't an assessment focus for us. You'll also receive 2 comments from the teacher. One will be about your child's achievements. So it will talk about the things that they have mastered. It may talk about their learning behaviors in these lessons. So that is, the area where we're celebrating the achievements that your child has made. And then the area for next steps. So that then will relate to, okay, your child is at achieving for number. What are the next steps for them to continue to make that great progress? Or what are the next steps for them to really push themselves? In English, you'll receive a grade or a level descriptor for reading, writing, and spoken language. And again, a section for achievements and for next steps. The international primary curriculum, and this is where Rosemary pointed out, we had different descriptors. So it would talk about beginning, developing, and mastering. And we've aligned their rubric with our assessment descriptors. So this will be consistent. So we will be using emerging, approaching, achieving, and exceeding for IPC as well. So it'll be consistent all the way through the report instead of having 2 different types of assessment reporting on there. The teacher will talk about your child's achievements in the international primary curriculum and science also, and then what the next steps will be and that's specific for your child. In world languages, so whether your child studies French or Spanish, they will be given a judgment for their receptive language. So how much of that language are the teachers assessing that your child can understand? And then obviously for the productive element, so when in speaking and in producing the language, where is your child according to the levels that the teachers have set for that? You'll then receive a learning summary in there. So that will be a summary of the learning that your child's year group in that language has taken place over the reporting cycle. So it'll give you a little summary of the curriculum, the target language that the children have been learning, and it may give a little preview as to kind of what they'll be looking at next. In performing arts and music, one of the things that has changed there also was the assessment areas were broken down into ways of being, ways of thinking, ways of doing, and that was kind of aligned with the curriculum from Juilliard, the curricular approach from Juilliard. And the feedback that I received from parents and also from some of the teachers was, it's not clear, we don't understand it. What does it actually mean? So I've worked with the performing arts department to summarize what does that actually mean. And they decided that these descriptors would be better. So we will look at, in performing arts, at children's creativity skills, their performance skills, and then their ability to reflect on their creative process and also their performance. So hopefully that will be much clearer for parents. It will be easier for me to understand as well. And then we'll have a learning summary in there. Again, that will be a summary for your child's class. It will explain to you kind of what the things are that they've been learning, and then you can kind of compare that then against where, the judgments that the teacher has given. And finally, we have physical education. So they have summarized their skill areas as well. So we'll look at children's skills, tactical awareness, health and fitness, the feedback, and roles and responsibilities. So again, on that section, the children, it will be grayed out if they haven't assessed that area. They're not always assessing every single area in the grading period. And then again, the learning summary will look at the things that your child has been learning during that session, the different areas of physical education. One thing that I have actually realized that I've missed out, which was on the early years, I can see Rosemary looking at me, is the report, like the early years report, will begin with the teacher narrative. Like Rosemary said, the most lovely part to write, which is a really personal comment about your child. It will look at their well-being, it will look at how they've started the year, it will look at their general classroom behavior, and all different elements. So that will be at the beginning, and also your child's the student narrative, the student voice element, where your child will talk about how they feel their year has started. So that is at the beginning of the primary report as well. If your child joined our school after October half term, they will have missed a good chunk of the first grading and assessment and reporting period. So we will not be giving them a judgment based on that period. You will get what we call a settling in report. So the settling in report from the teacher will have a look at, we'll give you a teacher comment. It will also include student voice. So we'll look at how well your child has started. We're focusing particularly on English and maths, and also a general comment about settling in. Have they made relationships, friendships, how are they, a well-being comment as well. Anything significant, that the teacher is seeing, positive, and also areas for development. And then also the student voice, so your child's opportunity just to say, this is how they feel they've settled in, and kind of what they might be looking forward to the year ahead. You'll then receive your more formal, leveled and graded report in the next 12-week reporting cycle. So the next element to the assessment and reporting and reflection cycle is reflection. So the children I know are working on these at the moment, and each child has a progress portfolio. If your child has been in this school for several years, you will have seen the progress portfolio. It is posted to their Seesaw profile as part of the assessment and reporting cycle, and by children in years 3 to 6. And during the progress portfolio, children get an opportunity to go through guided reflection on their learning and also their achievements, not just academic. They'll also reflect on this. This is called the effective learner descriptors. So these are areas where we help children to reflect on how they approach their learning in 4 areas: in their organization, in their engagement, in how productive they are, and also in how reflective they are on a daily basis in order to help drive their learning forward. So there's little rubrics there for the children to do a self-assessment, and they'll include that in their progress portfolio. That will be posted to Seesaw. It looks at goal setting. So your child will set themselves some goals based on the feedback from the first term, based on how they feel they've performed in different areas of the curriculum, based on their assessment against the learning, the effective learning descriptors. They may have said, well, when I'm in the lesson, I'm really engaged, but when it comes to my independent work, I might not be very productive. So what are the things that I can do because I want to be, more independent in my learning? So the teacher will guide the children through this and talk to them and help them set themselves some realistic goals in, areas that they want to improve. We also encourage our children to share with us their achievements outside of school. We know that their lives don't begin and end when they walk into school, and they have many achievements and things and interests that we would like to share in this portfolio. So we do encourage them to, include photographs and things that they've done outside of school. We also encourage them to and ask them to reflect on the learner leader profiles. So these are some elements and traits that make a really great learner and a really great leader. So we'll ask them to share examples of where they feel that they have exemplified these traits. And these are the traits that they are given house points for. So we're having these conversations with them consistently. So we may give them a house point and we'll say, look, I've given you this house point, because you were really reflective in your learning. the piece of work that you did, it didn't go as well as you thought it was going to go. You really thought hard about what you were going to do next. That's a really great example of what a reflective learner is. So then the teacher, when the child comes to fill out the learner leader profile, will say, remember when you did that piece of English writing and you wrote that story and the plot didn't go so well, but you reflected. So the child can really use concrete examples from their own experience to show how they can develop as a really great learner and leader. So as I said, they will post this to Seesaw. So we really do encourage you to, that once it's posted, put aside 20 minutes and sit and have your child go through this with you. It is there. They are supposed to be in charge of this. So really let them talk, ask them questions about it, and let them kind of explain to you how they feel they're doing as a learner. And then the final step in our assessment, reporting, reflection cycle is the parent teacher student conference. Now, if ISAMS behaved itself this morning, you should have received an email from your child's class teacher, and it would have included all of the instructions as to how to book your appointment for the conferences. They are booked through the parents' evening system. There are links in here, and attached to the email that the teacher sent out should be a cheat sheet for you as to how to book your appointment to meet with the teacher. Now, it's really important that you put your information into the parents' evening system exactly as it's been entered in our ISAM system. If you have any problems at all with that, please email Dr. Eaton, and his email address is in the email that your child's teacher has sent you, and he will help you access ISAMS. He will help you get your information right so that you can make that booking, that appointment. So don't worry if you're having any problems with that. All of our appointments, I'm very happy to say, hasn't been this way for a long time, but our appointments default to in-person. So we will assume that if you feel comfortable to come into school, we will have an in-person appointment with you. However, that appointment can be virtual if you prefer. So when you make your appointment, there's an opportunity in the notes section. If you just popped in the notes section to the teacher to say that you would prefer that to be virtual, or drop your child's teacher an email and just let them know, hey, I've made an appointment for the Tuesday evening at 4:30. Can we do that virtually? And they'll send you a link for your appointment. So just to offer both options, whatever works best for you. Each appointment is 20 minutes long, and the structure of the appointment is that the first 10 minutes is the parent, teacher, student section. So this is where we will talk with your child about their learning and their progress during the assessment cycle. They may want to show you and share with you some work that they feel really demonstrates their learning or their progress. Children like to choose pieces of work to show with you, whether it's on Seesaw or whether it's a written piece or in a book. And that really is a three-way conversation that involves parents, teachers, and students. Now, the second part of the appointment of the parent-teacher-student conference is parent and teacher. As parent, I know that sometimes there are things that I want to ask my daughter's teacher that I don't necessarily want her to be involved in at that level of conversation. I might have a concern that I want to talk to the teacher about. There might be something that I want to tell the teacher, that's going on with my child that I don't necessarily want them to be part of that conversation. So the second part of the conference is reserved for that conversation for you to have with your child's teacher. They'll share, their observations with you. They can expand on any of the comments that they've made in the report or any of their areas for further development. And it's a really good opportunity for you to ask any questions that you might have about the report or about your child's progress, their well-being, anything really that you want to ask. If you have some quite specific questions, please do send them to your child's teacher in advance, because that will give them the opportunity to gather some materials. They may get some samples of work. It may be areas that you want to work on with your child at home, or something that you might want to focus on. And it'll just give them the opportunity in advance to kind of get some things prepared for you and really address the questions that you have. If it's a more general conversation, they of course will be fully prepared for that. But if it's a specific question. So hopefully we have achieved or we're approaching or achieving our goals for today in terms of giving you some information about our assessment processes, about how they feed into the grading and how that then feeds into the report that you will receive next Thursday. Then how reflection is a key part of that, and then what you can expect at the parent teacher student conference. Rosemary, have I missed any key points? Is there anything you think that I need to add or address?
No, I don't think so. That was everything we had talked about covering.
I think that I've answered questions in the chat. If anybody had anything else they wanted to ask or to get in touch with myself or Rosemary directly, but we are going to send all of this information out, and it does have all of the links in there. Okay, I don't see anything. Maybe people are... Oh, now I have some questions. Let me see. So I have a question about MAP testing results. So our students in years 4 to 6 do sit MAP assessments, and they do that 3 times each year. MAP is a measure of academic progress. So that's an external standardized assessment that we use. And I referred to it there in terms of it's used to help triangulate our teacher judgments and our teacher data. We don't automatically send out the MAP testing results. If there are any concerns or inconsistencies that we have, we would then kind of share it with parents and have a conversation. But you certainly can request for your children's MAP result if you would like to see them, and we can arrange to sit and discuss those with you. Out of context, it's just one piece of information. So I do like to sit with parents and talk about them. So if you want to have a chat and have a look at there's a lot of data, but we'll be happy to share them with you and arrange for you to meet. So if you want to just get in touch with your child's class teacher for that, or you can get in touch with myself, I'll be happy to go through that with you. Okay, I think that's it. I don't think I see any more questions. But if you do have any questions, please just, get in touch with us. Just want to say thank you. I know that everybody is busy, so we do appreciate you spending the time to listen. We're going to send all of this information out to you. So thanks again. Have a lovely day and have a lovely weekend. Bye-bye now.